Okay, guys, I know it's been a while. Apologize for that. I've been trying out new things in my life. Um, but what I like to do with this channel is when I come across um, different different philosophies or trends or different ways to look at things, I like to highlight them. And there were a couple videos that I saw recently, ran across that kind of had the same theme, and uh, and I'll just go ahead and start the first one, and then kind of comment a little bit. But some of you guys might know short fact otaku.
Different
Um,
direction. If you've seen
um, I heard about this guy in various discords. He's a streamer, gamer. Um, Calls himself, I guess, a centrist. Pretty prolific on YouTube, and I like some of his stuff. But anyway, listen to what he has to say here.
me on Adam and Sitch, you know that I'm not a big fan of Mencius Moldbug. Alternatively, if you've been watching me for any length of time, you also know that I believe that every notable writer and thinker is notable for a reason, that they've all said something insightful, from Moldbug to Marx. And just because
Okay, so before I continue with this, his stream of consciousness, uh, uh, Marcus Smolbug, or Mencius Smolbug, is this guy, Curtis Guy Yarvin, born 1973. Of course, Wikipedia, take it with a grain of salt. But it says an American blogger. He is known along with philosopher Nick Land for founding anti-egalitarian and anti-democratic philosophical movement known as Dark Enlightenment or Neo-Reactionary Movement, NRX. I had heard of Mencius Moldbug in the past, and it was a term called the cathedral, and that's pretty much what this video is going to be about. Not just about the cathedral, but kind of how to think about it. Um, in his blog, Unqualified Reservations, which he wrote from 2007 to 2014, and on his younger Substack page called, oh man, I hate this, called Gray Mirror, which started in 2020, he argues that American democracy is a failed experiment which should be replaced by an accountable monarchy, similar to the governance structure of corporations. Now, I'd like to actually go and read and verify that this is indeed what he's pushing, but I do think, from what I do know, that he calls it how he sees it, and his criticism is with the university system. And I've talked about the university system in my previous videos. You can definitely, it is true that the university system breeds a certain culture. Um, People think a certain way when they go to university. I've been to university personally, and I loved it. But you know, the people that come out of university have a way of looking at things, a way of looking at life, a way of looking at government. Anyway, so um, born 1973 to an educated liberal secular family. His grandparents on his father's side were Jewish American communists. His father, Herbert Yarvin, worked for the U.S. government as a foreign service officer, and his mother was a Protestant from Westchester County. He spent part of his childhood abroad, mainly in Cyprus. 85, he returned to the U.S. and entered Johns Hopkins longitudinal study of mathematically precocious youth. So he's kind of a bright kid, and as I'll show you in a minute, his blog is pretty extensive. He's definitely a thinker. He graduated from Brown University in 1992, then was a graduate student of computer science PhD program at UC Berkeley, before dropping out after a year to join a tech company. Um, in the 1980s and 90s, Yarvin was influenced by the libertarian tech culture of Silicon Valley. Yarvin read right wing and American conservative works. Um, the Libertarian University of Tennessee Law. Um, and actually, you know what? Apologize. I'm just going to verify that I'm recording right now. Yeah, it looks like I am. Okay, cool. Um, so he has his blog. Um, let me see. This is, yeah, here we go. So unqualified reservations. Strange blog, goal is to cure your brain. We've all seen The Matrix. We know about red pills. Many claim to sell them. You can go, for example, to any bookstore, ask the guy behind the counter for some Noam Chomsky. You'll get his blue pills. What you'll get is blue pills soaked in red number 3. All right, so he's got some books, and he's got, I guess, some of his main writings here are pretty popular on the internet. These are some of his books that I guess you can buy. And I'm a little jealous that this guy is publishing all these books. But, he started this blog 2007 in April, and it went on and on and on, on and on and on, on and on and on, until 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, shorter couple here, 2014. And he has this coda one where if you click on this, you get the he says his mission is complete, and it links you to that scene in The Matrix where the traitor takes the pill, goes back into the Matrix, and wants to eat steak. All right, so this is Moldbug, and briefly right there, actually, before we go to the video, I want to explain something. So when I heard about the cathedral, so my background is information technology, and I've read about the cathedral and the bazaar. So you don't want to confuse the two. I don't know if subconsciously, since he went into computers, whether or not this is where he got the idea from the cathedral, but the cathedral or the bazaar was based on a publication in 2000 by Eric Stephen Raymond, The Cathedral and the Bazaar, and explains the different software programming methodologies where the commercial world, this would be working for Microsoft or whatever, closed source is Cathedral, where Linux and open source is a bazaar model. And I'll have all these links in the description, but if you go to, here it is, the tablet, tabletmag.com, there's an explanation, more recent. This was March 30, 2022, and it kind of explains the difference between that software methodology. All right. All right. So that's the cathedral. Actually, there was one other site that I came across, Chateau. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Artistes, and the left in Wikipedia has labeled this alt-right kind of stuff. But the cathedral and the hive mind. So the cathedral and the hive mind. As many CH readers are already acquainted, the term cathedral was coined by MM and reformatted by yours truly for audience to mean collective motivations and enlivening spirit of the bulk of the human machinery that powers the entertainment, media, government, and academic industrial complexes in the West, particularly in America. This human machinery is mostly progressive in political disposition, equalist in ideology, tyrannical in method, snarky in execution, and hypocritical in principle. I pretty much agree with all that. Lately, though, sizable, and this was written 2013, okay, way before the pandemic. This is, I think back when Obama was president. Lately, though, a sizable contingent of readers have emailed and expressed their disapproval of the use of the term cathedral as condensed expression of the postmodern monstrosity known by Chateau proprietors as leftoidism. These inconsumately irate readers claim that the word cathedral unfairly maligns a mostly beneficent European Christian tradition while gliding over the influence of outside forces and shaping and projecting the equalist agenda. And so basically, this is the main criticism of the cathedrals, that everything is centered upon it's like a everyone's got to be equal, like 100% equal. No 1% of unequalness is not good. So that is their agenda, the equalist agenda. One reader suggested that the term instead be replaced with the word hive to represent a reflexive, obedient, hive-like thinking of elite and sub-elite SWPL whites on the subject of human intellectual, psychological, sex differences, both within and between groups. I find this argument slightly ridiculous in its insistence on adhering to strictly dichotomous premise that either this force or that force is solely responsible for the transmission of malignant ideas and the consequent public policies. Why can't it be both? A native decadency can exert a subversion within the culture to which they are ostensible caretakers even more powerfully than a self-interested, self-condoned outsider. The parasite infects most readily the already weakened host. Having shared my time with what aggrieved readers would refer to as heirs of the honorable traditions architecturally exalted by real cathedrals, I come away with two distinct impressions formed by face-to-face interaction as opposed to solitary nights neck craned over dense history books. So he goes on here to explain why the term, I guess, is still valid. It's basically, now he's describing the hive mind, and this is basically, NPCs, what we call them now, how they, I'll read it anyway. Many of the old cathedral's children are true believers in their modern equalist dribble. When their opportunity presents, they spout it with strident certainty and emotional commitment that simply cannot be faked on a consistent basis. Most of these same children of the cathedral are hypocrites in everything they do and every way they organize their actual living, breathing lives. They belie their own words and beliefs with such cheerful alacrity and oblivious self-contradiction that a person of saner mind might wonder how they manage the disjunct without heavy doses of cortex dueling medications. How to square this circle? Remember the rationalization hamster, you'll find your answer. The hamster is errant rodent of the ego, the most powerful source of energy in the universe. The hamster spins as ruthlessly for believers in a universal human biological equality, which in the present cultural milieu necessitates a belief in white male nefariousness. As it spins for girls with a reputation in mind who want their romantic surrender minus the messiness of personal agency. It is no less incomprehensible to those who have been around the block more than a few times that an ideological, ego-invested Brian Kaplan will live in an all-white collar, blue-white bubble while clamoring for open borders, that it is that a nice girl will sleep with a Tacticurn tattooed bike messenger while claiming she wants a nice guy who's sensitive to her needs and loves poetry. The cathedral is one of these multi-use terms that has come to symbolize the most current radical real talkers, and has in fact always symbolized more or less colloquial usage. Any social or political superstructure advancing a school of ideas, especially ideas anathema to the general welfare of those in their prosperity who are without a voice or lever of power. Thus, I find no problem employing it. However, the hive neoliberalism works as well. Many equalists are quite stupid and unaware, marching morons blaring a tired, tiny tune because it feels good. And people pat them on the back for their embrace of willful stupidity. Good worker bees, they buzz and buzz while the queen grows strong on the relentless toil of their drone army. A hive mind, you would call this. The hive mind does not know logic unless its deployment advantages them, does not care for inconvenient facts, does not countenance empathy for those outside the hive. All the hive mind knows is wagon circling. The hive, i.e. the ego, must be protected against any and all attacks, and it will snark and sting in unison on command and won't stop until the telepathic telecommunications network that propels the hive mind is severed at multiple points and various neuronal substations are taken offline. The hive mind and the cathedral work together synergistically. Right now, the hive mind is at the apex of its power. No, wait until 2020. Like an alien Borg, it operates at the behest of a central master brain, aka the ruling globalist and message maker elite. The hive mind guards the perimeter, assimilates the weak-minded dissemble, drives out the free-thinking. You do not defeat the cathedral by attacking its hive mind hordes. All that will do is summon more replacements, which are, for practical purposes, infinite in number. The master brain, the root of it all, must be attacked directly, and then the hive mind will fall apart like unattended drones powering down. That is how you destroy the lords of lies who perch in their gated, honey-dripped throne rooms. Don't hack blindly at their winged servants, futilely dodging stingers and forcing defensive maneuverings. Drive to the tip of the spear, straight and true to the meat of the hive, through the colony of mental eunuchs buzzing their 11th sophisticacy until you hit the beating heart of lies. Then drive it further to deliver the mortal thrust. Now, I just want to caution people. I know how the leftist thinks, and once you make statements like it operates at the behest of a central master brain, aka the ruling globalist message maker elite. Okay, I know there's some people that say that saying this globalist is anti-Semitic. Personally, I don't think this. A globalist can be of any religion. And these are just people who want power at a global level. Doesn't matter the religion, doesn't matter the nationality. And if you go back to some of my older videos, I have one about where can't remember the Switzerland almost took over Mexico, and it's because the leader there thought he had a divine right to I think it was the Habsburgs to rule over everyone. So just take that to mind. I wanted to explain this before I played the video, just to give you a background on Moldbug and this idea of the cathedral. That was one explanation. Let's see. So real quick, if you went here, how to uninstall a cathedral. So this is, he's talking to progressives, and I haven't read this, but he describes in detail how to get rid of the cathedral. I'm not read this, but you can go read that. It's one of his essays. But here's a more recent 2021. So Yarvin has a Substack. It's called Gray Mirror. I'll read this to you. Brief explanation of the cathedral. An oligarchy inherently converges on ideas that justify the use of power. I notice more people using this label, which I coined a long time ago, and I've always had ambivalent aesthetic feelings about it. I use the capital C, but I see more of the minuscule, and I think it's better. In other words, a lowercase c. The cathedral, quote, is a short way to say journalism plus academia. In other words, the intellectual institutions at the center of modern society. Just as the church was the intellectual institution at the center of medieval society. Right, the church in medieval society kept all the records, they had all the money, they ran society. But the label is making a point. The cathedral church is one institution. The cathedral is many institutions, yet the label is singular. This transformation from many to one, literally e pluribus unum, is the heart of the mystery of the heart of the modern world. The mystery of the cathedral. The mystery of the cathedral is that all the modern world's legitimate and prestigious intellectual institutions, even though they have no central organization connection, behave in many ways as if they are a single organizational structure. Amen. Anyone who's seen social media during the pandemic knows this is true. Most notably, the pseudo-structure is synoptic. It has one clear doctrine or perspective. It always agrees with itself. Still more puzzlingly, its doctrine is not static. It evolves. This doctrine has a predictable direction of evolution, and the whole structure moves together. For instance, in 1921, Harvard, Yale, the Times, and the Post are on the same page. If there exists any doctrinal difference between any two of these prestigious American institutions, it is too ineffable for anyone but a Yale man to discern. Though may say something, the gray mirror is not taught at Harvard. And I will go back to Fata Toku's video. I will go back to it. I just want you to thoroughly understand this before he explains what he's going to explain. In 1951, Harvard, Yale, and the Times and the Post were on the same page, but in Yale in 1951 was nowhere near the same page as Yale in 2021. If you could teleport either Yale into each other's time zones, they would see each other as a den of intellectual criminals. It's true. That's not consistent. The thinking has changed. We have changed. So it's not just everyone, at least everyone cool is on the same page. It's more like everyone is reading the same book at the same speed. No wonder all the peasants are seeing conspiracies in their MFering soup. If you saw a group of bright red dots move across the evening sky this way, what would you think they were? Pigeons? Remote-controlled pigeons illuminated by lasers? Sometimes even Occam is baffled. Moreover, this mystery is critical to the nature, fate, and epistemology of our society because we regard the distributed nature of these prestigious and trusted institutions as inviolable principle of our intellectual security. We would never concede this level of axiom infallibility to a single organization, like the Catholic Church, that would be pulling all our brains into one basket. No egghead would make that mistake. While we are aware that individuals, even very smart individuals, can go extremely awry in their perception and analysis of reality, and while we have seen even groups do the same thing, hence groupthink, we are sure they cannot all go wrong together. To err is human, but eliminating error is just a function of sufficient statistical power. But statistics only work if your samples are independent. If some mysterious force is coordinating them, you are not measuring reality and you are not measuring that force. There's been recently a lot of criticism of academia not trying to disprove hypothesis, but only trying to prove what they already have discovered. And there's also, I'd recommend a YouTube channel. The name escapes me at the moment, but it's a medical channel where they talk about how there's a crisis. Many of the scientific literature is about doing experiments, controlled experiments, and you have to have repeatability. And a lot of times, a lot of these experiments are never tested, never rechecked, and they have problems that they're not reproducible. We can expect this form of coordinated progress in hard science and engineering. These fields are tightly constrained by two inexorable forces: physical reality and human ignorance. The latter relaxes its grip only painfully 1 millimeter, but the physical and human situation of the arts and humanities, of philosophy, ethics, literature, religion, and politics is largely unchanged for millennia. We see no evidence of any eccentrics or unidirectional force that should be coordinating these fields, yet these are just the fields that seem to be moving the fastest. Who are we? Where are we going? If we could understand the forces that are driving us, we could predict where we're going. Unfortunately, the answer may be hell. Darwin and the disclosures. All right, so this actually is longer than I thought. It gets to the cathedral cannot be repaired. I think it gets into it's pretty long. Let's see if they've got a summary at the end. Basically, you get the idea of what the cathedral is. The cathedral can't be repaired for two reasons. First is that it can't be repaired. Just look at it. The second is that it isn't the problem. Go back to the lake and the sewage. How do you fix the lake? Not by skimming off the algae. Obviously, you need to stop the sewage leak and get rid of the pig farm. Then you can either wait for the lake to purify itself naturally or pump the polluted water out and let the Clear Blue Mountain stream refill the basin. I recommend the latter. In this case, a pig farm is a form of government that leaks power, that inherently wants to outsource responsibilities to outside actors. Whenever the government relies on university research for strategy or policy decision, it makes a decision which is influenced by media reporting or selectively releases information to the media. This trust is leaking sovereignty into the cathedral. Thus, being outside the government is about as democratic as Genghis Khan. Why does the government, more precisely civil service, leak power? Because it's a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies leak power. It's like asking why a two-stroke engine burns oil, at least why a diesel engine puffs out soot. In a bureaucracy, decisions at every level are not taken by individuals, they are taken by processes. All work according to process. Managers in a bureaucracy are not bosses, they are exception handlers. Fundamental rule of success of a bureaucrat is that while it is important to get credit for things that do right, it is essential to avoid blame for things that go wrong. Fortunately, a decision by process spreads and multiplies the thrill of success while it diffuses and dilutes the sorrow of failure. So this kind of gets off into a tangent of what I want to talk about, or what Fatoteku says here, but I just wanted to give you an idea of where this guy's coming from. Again, you can go back here. Unqualifiedreservations.org or unqualified-reservations.org is the site, the blog from 2007 to 2011. All right, let's go back to the video.
Because you disagree with all of their prescriptions doesn't mean that they have no insight to offer. As a matter of fact, though their prescriptions are dogshit, both Marx and Moldbug have some good critiques that are worth reading. One of the metaphors Moldbug likes to use is the elf and the hobbit. He's a Tolkien nerd. Here's how he frames the conversation in his essay, You Can Only Lose the Culture War. We know who are the hobbits and who are the elves. We know who is on top and who's on the bottom. We know what the elves want. They want to live beautiful lives. We know what the hobbits want. They want to grill and raise kids. What he's saying here is pretty obvious. The elves are the cosmopolitan upper-class American left wing, who rent out the shoeboxes in shiny expensive cities and live very picturesque Instagram lives, and they're very attractive people, and they sit on their high horse about how morally superior they are. The hobbits are the flyover state country bumpkin American right wing, who want to be left alone to their land and their traditions, to raise their families and do honest work, and keep their noses out of other people's private business, and not care too much about their redneck social standing. Moldbug also makes this dynamic clear about elves and hobbits. Even when elves use political power to impose elf culture on you, you cannot use political power to impose hobbit culture on elves. If there is a way to impose hobbit culture only on hobbits, there might be a case. But our country is not configured to support separate rules for elves and hobbits. If it was, it would be a different country. Maybe a better country, but it isn't. The only way to impose hobbit culture is to impose it on everyone, including elves. Elves do not like to be told what to do by hobbits. Even advice makes elves mad. It is outrageous and disrespectful. And when hobbits coerce elves, utterly unacceptable. Even if such coercion is only symbolic, it is a profound violation of elven rights. Your elf will not just be mad, he will explode, wronged in every fiber of his being. America is a political marriage of blue state elves and red state hobbits. The elves are terrified of the hobbits' pitchforks. They can only survive by ruling the hobbits with an iron hand, or at least by inundating the hobbits' brains with pro-elf propaganda, or better yet, both. Hobbits just want to be governed sensibly, in a way that makes sense to hobbits, so that they can just grill. Hobbits have little desire for power and no great talent for it, which is what makes them so easy for the elves to rule. And hobbits are not in their hearts, into telling elves how to live their lives. Hobbits do not need to be in charge. Hobbits do not want to rule the world, should not want to rule the world, and could not rule the world. Hobbits do not even need to be governed by hobbits, they just need to be governed as hobbits. Governing them as elves, though, generates significant irritation and is best regarded as hobbit abuse. The TLDR here is that the American left and right are not simply two political wings, they are two different ethnicities, not in the blood sense, but in the culture sense. Go back and watch my video on indigeneity. They have a different geography, different customs and traditions and beliefs. They have a different sense of how the world around them should be. This is the main reason that so many populists right now are pushing for a national divorce. I don't know about that one personally, but I do know that Moldbug's analysis of the right and the left, that the left wants to live attractive, materially fulfilled lives, while the right wants to live local, spiritually fulfilled lives, is, broadly speaking, accurate. Whenever something goes viral on the internet that is utterly alien to most normies, and revolting to most rightoids, like the NPC TikTok stream thing, this is a portal opening between the two worlds. This is the Hobbit seeing what passes for elf culture and wondering what the actual fuck is going on over there. The height of the left's dual focus on social status and materialism was always going to lead to this sort of thing. If you're a porn watcher, you know new porn is...
We're not talking about porn. So what this was sparked by was... I'm not even going to play this, but this is a TikTok trend where people act like an NPC. NPCs, non-player character in video games, and just sit there and rake in the money just by using repetitive motions. They're generally very attractive people. But anyway, the point is that's how this video started, and this is what this video is about. But he goes into describing this Moldbug description of the right and the left. Now, so, I mean, this is not new. If you think about when you were in school, hopefully they teach this to, people in today's educational system, but you can think of a traditional separation of rural versus urban. I mean, farmers versus city folk both have very different needs, but the cultures are different. And what they're talking about is a separation of culture. The elves being the Hollywood elite, essentially, and hobbits being, flyover country. Maybe the people who live in the hollers. You think of Trumpers. They just want to be left alone. And it's just a new way of thinking about it. That they're so different, and I can attest that these different groups think differently so much that it's even surprising that we have a single country right now. For someone who's tried to defend Second Amendment rights, myself, I can they've been going after the guns forever. And they used to say, oh, we'll never go after your guns. Oh, you're paranoid. Oh, what are you talking about? No one's talking about banning guns. And everyone saw that they were either lying or they were lying to themselves. We knew that they'd go after them, and they continue to. But anyway, it's just a different mindset. You see that in the cities, see that with the rioting. So anyway, this other video that I ran across was this channel here, Thinking Ape, and he had a recent video about the trouble with Zoomers, and of course Zoomers being, I guess, people in high school now who maybe you're in college, you're a Zoomer. Millennials came before, and then Gen X. I talk about myself being a boomer, but I'm really in Gen X. But this guy talks about sort of the same thing, and this gets into thinking about the differences between men and women. And I think he's particularly talking about male Zoomers here, but let's listen to what he has to say.
We're going to be talking about the reasons as to why there's such a huge gap between the Zoomers and previous generations, specifically Generation X and the so-called boomers. Because it is absolutely astonishing when you think about the degree of disconnect that exists between the generations right now. And I think there are a few reasons for this, although there are two primary reasons. The first reason is a much larger overarching reason, and that is quite simply that there has been this cleavage that has occurred between the different socioeconomic and cultural classes that exist in the West, specifically in the United States. Many times I have referred to this as cultural speciation, and I think that's a real thing, which is to say the relationship between the ruling class, as it were, the upper classes, and their ability to relate and find familiarity with those quote unquote beneath them has all but evaporated, or completely evaporated, better put, and there just isn't a connection there. It is looking at a completely different species, and in fact, I know of an anecdote of a bunch of Harvard academics a while back that wanted to investigate what blue-collar people are doing in the state of Massachusetts, to sort of relate to them, right? They head out there, they get to know the people, and they come to the conclusion that these people are basically aliens. They have nothing in common with us, and vice versa. They might as well be living on a completely different planet. And so this socioeconomic cultural...
So cultural speciation, whereas Moldbug says elves and hobbits. He's just saying that these academics are totally different species, totally separate. They just don't even understand.
Speciation has a lot to do with the neglect we see in terms of the young Zoomers, because typically when you look at young male Zoomers that are struggling, they're either in a middle class or lower class milieu. They're typically not the children of wealthy, successful, highly educated Generation X or Boomer people, because those people exist in a completely different social stratum. And if you pay attention to things, I'll have a lot more to say about this in future videos, the only subspecies of human being these days that's doing reasonably well, all things considered, is that highest tier, highest echelon of socioeconomic, cultural, educational class, whether that class is left or right, although overwhelmingly they tend to be left, but regardless of their political affiliations, they tend to be doing quite okay, as are their children as a rule. I know of many such examples, both anecdotal and otherwise, that prove this. No, the people that are struggling in general are the people that don't belong in that class. And the people that are struggling most, you could argue, the people that have their whole lives ahead of them, the young male Zoomer. And so you have this massive social stratification occurring at the highest levels of society, because these people no longer have a sense of stewardship, no longer have a sense of connection, and don't even want to connect to people that they regard as beneath them, as unrelatable, and is simply not worthy of their attention. That's one major issue here, which is why people can talk about the crisis of boys and the crisis of male youth and all the things that the male youth are not doing and should be doing, but nothing is done for them in order that they be helped, which is the main point here. And we see reflections of this throughout society. Recall eons ago that the Boy Scouts, yes, an exclusionary all-male unit, as it were, dedicated to the growth of boys and understanding male camaraderie and cooperation, this sort of thing, was summarily disbanded in favor of creating a unisex organization that anyone can join. Males, females, girls, boys, doesn't matter. Mind you, all the while, paying attention to this, the Girl Scouts still exists, but it isn't unisex. Only girls can join the Girl Scouts. So we've seen over the previous decades this constant assault on male spaces and areas of life that are beneficial to men, above all young men, to give them an opportunity to grow, to get to know themselves, get to know other men, to learn the ways of the world as a man. You deprive them of this on a macroscopic level, and then you start asking, among other things, why are these young men not quote-unquote functioning as they should?
Okay, so he goes on, but I wanted to point the similarities between the two videos. The emphasis obviously is on Zoomers, and but I can tell you in general. Well, first of all, I was very I was like, what happened to the Boy Scouts? What now? Girls can join the Boy Scouts, and wouldn't you know it? In 2019, Boy Scouts of America announced girls were allowed to join. The organization changed its name from Boy Scouts to Scouts BSA. What a fait accompli. The feminists have destroyed this one. I knew, wasn't a Boy Scout myself. I was in Cub Scouts, but I knew Eagle Scouts. These were great boys, and they turned into great men. So our society is being destroyed I just I fear for what will happen to our society in a few years, because this will work itself out. This stuff does have profound implications for the future of our society, and we're the most powerful country on the planet. So let's all pray that things will continue to go smoothly. That individually, men and boys will be able to prosper, and do think about some ways that you can improve your local community. Um, if you have friends, tell them about Video Brain. Um, like and subscribe. And until next time, Brain out.